Okay, so we've moved our way just slightly northwest of where we were before. So this is where this line going to the station and the freight sheds over there would have met up with the main line. So right here where James Street, which is the street in front of us, intersects with Kingston, which is the street that we've been on. Now the feature that you're going to see right now wasn't there when the line was first built. So this underpass here that runs under the Canadian Pacific line was constructed in 1937. So if you can imagine here, and again we'll come back to this map when we come up on the other side, you could imagine quite an interlock here where you have the Canadian Pacific, you have the Canadian National or the Canadian Northern line in the beginning crossing, and then you have the Grand Trunk line here crossing as well. So you basically have three railway lines kind of intersecting each other. So now that we come up on the other side of this underpass here, we're going to loop into the parking lot here of the funeral home here. So here's the part of the story where I have some of my own recollections. So if you can imagine that line coming up, the Grand Trunk line coming up right here and running to the north, running that way up the same direction that James Street runs, and then curving once it eventually gets to where we're going to be heading to. So as I said, there's a part that I recollect in here. So the little mini mall that's right across the street there, that's right across Gore Street, when I was a kid, that wasn't there. So what was here was there was a railway line that actually came up through here, and right here there was a place called Mount McKay Feeds, and then there was a series of freight sheds, and I don't know if those were Grand Trunk freight sheds, if they were put in for somebody else, or they were freight sheds used for some other type of purpose, but I remember those freight sheds. And this railway line that came up basically connected with that Canadian Northern, the Canadian National line that we had pointed out earlier, where the rails are still in place. So it would have curved into that area, and I'm guessing this was used to kind of provide a rail connection to that feed store and those sheds that were here. Let's cross the street. I was hoping to do this actually on Good Friday. Which is this Friday coming up. Today's Sunday. Unfortunately, we're supposed to have a big snowstorm, and so that might take that completely off the table. So what I'm guessing happened with the rail lines here is that this piece, this little side piece, because it makes a jog, and I'm going to show you a map momentarily here. There's a jog in the railway line, so it literally comes up pretty much right where the sidewalk is here, and then kind of makes a jog to kind of get onto the street. And you can imagine the original Grand Trunk line would have been running just directly up where the street is today. So I'm guessing, I don't know if that jog was an old spur or siding that was here, again, to serve these freight sheds that would have been located in this area. But in any case, I remember all of this. I remember this rail, this line. I remember the jog, and then running down the street. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pause here. I'm going to show you those maps again. I'm going to show you the 1913 map. I'm going to show you a 1925 map, and then I'm going to show you a couple more modern, quote-unquote, topographic maps, and you're going to be able to see some of that. Okay, so again, I do apologize. It's very busy. This was not my original intention, but sometimes you just have to go with what the weather gods give you. So we're now on the north side of this intersection. So this is a major intersection in this area. So you have Frederica Street and James Street. I'm very, very familiar with this area because I grew up just not that far to the west down Frederica Street. So this is kind of a little bit of my own sort of stomping ground, if you will. So as I mentioned, I'm very, very familiar with the area. And so when I was a kid, when I was younger, up until about, I don't know the exact date, I want to say 1990 or so, James Street ended here and then it resumed farther up, and we're going to be sort of pointing that out. So essentially what happened was that Grand Trunk line came straight up through here. Again, in more modern times, there was that bit of a jog, but then it crossed the street here. Where this Robin's Donuts is, used to be a gas station, and then the line used to come up here. And again, I distinctly remember it because when I was 15, I got my first job, and the job was at a grocery store that was just down the road, and I used to ride my bike when I could. And I remember crossing those railway tracks all the time, right? I would cross them going one way over there, and then I would remember crossing here because basically there was no, I don't think there was a stop sign on here, and I think I just used to go sort of straight through. And so again, then the line kind of straightened out in this particular area here. So what we're going to do is we're going to make our way to the north here. We're going to jump on the bike trail away from the road. So one of the things that I'm sort of grappling with a little bit is when we get to the Canadian Pacific, the Canadian National Tracks up there, which was originally part of the Grand Trunk line, you're going to see it's elevated. I don't think it was like that when Grand Trunk built it. And so as the railway line came through this area, it started to get elevated, right? It was built up. And again, I don't think that was there when it was originally constructed. And I'm going to tell you a little funny story here once we get to this next intersection. So we've got to pass two intersections. So the first one here is Francis Street, and the next one is Mary Street. So here's my story. So again, this road wasn't here. It's just the railway line cutting through the area here. And again, it's elevated. There's a hump as it cuts through. So as you're crossing, you know, if you're on Francis Street and you're crossing over, and same thing with Mary Street, there's this hump. And so I can remember I had to be in grade 7, so probably around 12, I'm 12 years old or so, and I'm playing soccer, school soccer. And so the school I went to is just down that way a little ways, St. Anne's School. We're here in the heart of Westfort. And so I remember we're going to this soccer game, and what they used to do is they used to get us taxis. They used to get taxis to take us to the soccer game. So I remember there's a bunch of us in the taxi. I'm pretty sure it's soccer. I'm trying to think if it was anything else, but I'm pretty sure it was soccer. We're coming down, and wherever we're going to go play this soccer game. Pause here for a second with the traffic. And so there's a bunch of 12-year-old boys sitting in this car. And so again, there's this very distinct hump, and you had to kind of go slow over it because, it's a pretty big hump in the road. And I can remember some of the other kids that I was with are like, punch it, and they're yelling at the guy to stomp on the gas. And so he stomps on the gas, and we literally hit the railway tracks, right? It doesn't even stop to look if there's a train. And there wasn't a lot of traffic on here. It was just a little bit of sort of spur traffic. And we hit those tracks, and we literally pull a Dukes of Hazzard. We literally go flying airborne in the air. We got air, and I remember we came down, and you hear it come down on the shocks, and everybody's screaming and yelling, and not something that I would have advocated for, but I certainly distinctively remember that. Okay. So let's head north to the next intersection here. maybe when we get up here, what we should do is, because the line is going to curve here, and so what I should do is maybe we should pause here, and then I should show you some maps again, so you can kind of get your bearings in terms of where we are with things. So again, the line would have come up right in the middle of where the street is here, and then would have curved right just up ahead there. Be careful as we cross the... I don't like these urban explorations here. So much easier in the bush when you don't have anything to worry about. So the line would have begun to curve and would have gone right through that area there where you can see that paved spot just right up ahead. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you those maps, and then we'll work our way across the road.